Hi guys, welcome back to the second video in our FastAPI series. In our last video, we implemented the sign-up endpoint and also the email verification endpoint using OTP. So in this very video, we are going to see how to implement the JWT authentication, where users have to provide their email and their password to log in, and the JWT token will be generated for them to be authorized to use other authenticated endpoints in the site. So that's what we're going to be doing in this very video. We're going to be setting up our JWT authentication, login, and also maybe forget password and password reset as well. All right, for us to achieve this, we are going to be using the recommended package, which is the Python JAWS that was recommended in the documentation. There are other packages that you can also use as well for JWT authentication in FastAPI, but in the docs, this is what is on the documentation. So this is what we'll be using. So what we need to do first is to install this package. All right, while we are doing this, just take our 2 minutes to quickly like this video and hit the subscribe button if you've not subscribed. That will help me go a long way. All right, so let's quickly install this and start coding. So we can head over to our terminal and our virtual environment is activated. So we can simply just paste this where we are connected to the internet, just hit run, and this will quickly install this package for us. All right, if you scroll down the docs, I think around here, all right, so we need to have a secret key and also the algorithm and the access token expire date. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a private file also that is going to handle our JWT authentication inside our API module. I will just simply create a file, call it jwt_auth.py. In here, we are going to write a utility function that is going to help us generate our JWT token and another function to verify this token. So for us to achieve that, we need to also import some things. So we're going to say from FastAPI.security, we want to import the OAuth2 password bearer. All right, OAuth2 password bearer, we're going to be importing this. And secondly, from JAWS, which is just the package we installed, we're going to import JWT error and also JWT as well. All right, so let's also import from FastAPI status, depends, and HTTP exception. All right, so that these are the basic imports we need for now. If there's another import, we do as well. So first we will bring those 3 things that we set: the secret key, the algorithm, and all that. So I can just grab the ones here, but obviously for production you can change your secret key. So secret key actually is just a random character, string of character composed of letters, numbers, and all. So you can generate a new one. It has to be secret, so for that reason we have to put it in our environment variable. I mean my environment variable, and also the algorithm too in an environment variable as well. Then after that, we just simply create a simple function which we can call any name of our choice, but I'm going to call it create access token. All right, so this is going to take in an argument of data, which is just a dictionary of the user data that we want to encode in this token. All right, so before we proceed, let me put pass for now, and let's quickly bring this into our environment file. So I can underscore key, paste that here, but I'll change it later on. Then I think the algorithm, we can also do that as well. So algorithm is also coming here, and that we are going to make it. So cut this out, and I can do that as well. Put this one here, so save it. And also for the config, we also need to provide that in the settings as well. So here we're going to have the secret, in lowercase. All right, with that out of the way, so in here we can simply import, and as usual we just do a Python string. So if you don't know what we are doing here, just quickly check the first video that I uploaded on this series. That is where we actually configure the environment variable settings. All right, so that will retrieve for us. All right, so why that is out of the way. So in here, what we're going to do is, first of all, we are going to create a copy of our token data, which is the data that we want to encode. We'll say token data is equals to the data that was sent dot copy, that we want to create a copy of the data that was sent, because we want to add the expiring date as part of the data that will be encoded with JWT. All right, so this data can contain maybe the user and the user email, or maybe the user ID in the JWT token. So once we have a copy of that, so we need to create the expiring date. So we're going to say expire date time, so we're going to import date time as well. So yeah, we're going to say from date time, which is Python date time, data. All right, so yeah, we're going to say date time dot uc now is the correct time that the token was generated plus the time data, all right, of minutes, and the minute we want to use is our access token minutes. All right, so this will give us the expiring date. So once we have the expiring date, what we want to simply do is to say the token data, we want to add, we want to say update, and what we want to update is in here we want to put an extra key in the dictionary called expire. The value is going to be our expiring time. So once we have that in our token data, the next thing is to generate a token. Say token equals to, using our JWT module that we import, this very one, to encode. All right, and for us to encode is expecting three things. First of all, the token data that we want to encode, and secondly, the secret, which is going to be our secret key, and also the algorithm that is using, which we have algorithm equals to our own algorithm that we already have. All right, so once this generates a token for us, we want to simply return the token. Great. So the next we want to create is the verify token. So verify access token, and the token, which is going to be of type string, and also a credential exception. All right, so this we are going to put in a try and except block in case anything went wrong. So we're going to say except we have a JWT error, and then we want to do something else. All right, so first of all, let's go to the try block, and here we are going to have, let's say, create a variable called payload, and this payload is going to equals JWT. This is the module that we imported, dot decode, and this wants to decode the token that is being provided. All right, and also for us to decode that token, we also need our secret to make it more secure, so, and also the algorithm as well. But this time the algorithm in this case is going to be the list of algorithm. All right, so passing the algorithm. All right, so when this decodes, we can retrieve the data that we encoded, which obviously is going to be the user ID. So we're going to say user ID is going to come from a payload, which obviously is a dictionary. So it can be more than just one data that is being encoded. All right, it may be the user ID and the email, that is depending on your use case, or maybe if it's a multi and user type, it may be the user ID and the role of the user as well that is being encoded. But for this example, it's just going to be only the user ID. So since this payload is coming as a dictionary, we can simply say payload.get. All right, and what we want to get is the user underscore ID. All right, so we also need to create a schema to validate the token data that is coming. So we can easily go over to our schema.py file and then just create a simple schema data. Remember, these schemas are just working like a serializer that validates the data that is coming in or any data that is going out. So this will just need a user ID. All right, I want to make this an optional type. Alright, so we'll head over to our JWT underscore auth. So once we have this user ID from our token, we want to validate it by passing it to our payload. So passing it to our schema. So we say token data is equals to schema. I don't think I've imported schema, so let me quickly import that. Alright, so in here we can say schema.token data, and this is expecting the user ID equals to our own user ID. Alright, that's also in the exception block. In case there is any kind of error, maybe there's a JWT exception error, we want to quickly raise the credential exception. Aside that, we want to return our token data. And here we can as well do something like check if the user ID is none. That means no user ID was available in the token. We also want to raise the credential exception as well. Alright, so basically what this function is going to do is, once the user has been authenticated, that is, they have signed in they have logged in using their email and their password, and they have their token. So whenever that token is sent to our server, this is the function that is actually going to receive the token, decode it using our JWT module. When you decode it, have access to the data that were encoded in that token, validate the data, and make sure one is not none, and two, check if it matches the data that we are expecting. So if it matches, that's fine, except if there's anything has tampered with the token or whatever, or maybe the token was decoded outside our site, of which they can't have access to our secret key. That's the main thing. They can actually decode the token outside our site, maybe using any kind of JWT tool to decode it. But as far as the secret key is not the same, obviously they can't gain access to our server. So that's why we can return JWT error if anything has happened somehow. We catch that here in the exception. So if there's no error of nobody has tampered with the token, we can as well just return the token data, which is going to be our user ID. Alright, so with this function out of the way, we can now create another simple function called get authenticated user. Alright, so before we even come to this function, let me just put pass for a while for now. Remember we set the user ID that we are receiving to be a string, so we need to put that here. If not, our schema will not allow it to pass. Alright, so we say we are expecting the user data to be a string. In this case, that is the user ID, I mean, so we have to set that there. Then secondly, we need to set the OAuth underscore schema is equals to the OAuth bearer and OAuth2 bearer token that we'll set. And here we need to provide the token URL, which should be the endpoint to where users get access token, which is going to be in our API/v1/auth and /login. Alright, so this will be the endpoint where users have to visit to get their access token. Alright, so we need to set that as well. So once we have that in here, get authenticated user, this is the function that is actually going to receive the token, which is coming as a string, and as well is going to depend on our OAuth schema. Alright, so this is telling, and this function is actually telling that token is expecting a token, but that token that's expecting is actually coming from this endpoint, not some other random token. So once we have that, we can construct our credential exception, which is going to be an HTTP exception, and this is going to have the status code of status.401 unauthorized. Alright, then secondly, we want the details, which is going to be a string, or say could not validate credentials. And lastly, we also want to set the header, in this case, which is going to be a dictionary, or we have a authenticate, which is going to be bearer. All right, so actually you can get all these from the documentations. All these are there, so you can check, you can see all of them are here. All right, so you can see this is what I'm actually implementing now. All right, so this is it. This is the header we are referring to. Okay, so with that out of the way, this is the function that is actually going to simply return our verify auth user, which is going to passing the token that is receiving, and also this credential exception that we just constructed. All right, so these are the functions that we actually need to implement authentication. So with this out of the way, I think we are ready to start building our login endpoint. All right, so once we are done with our JWT auth functions that we need, it's time for us to start implementing our endpoint for user to log in. So in our auth.py file, here we're going to define the route for users to log in. So we're going to say router.post, because we want to make this a post request as well. So this is going to be /login, which is the endpoint we want to use, and here we'll set the status code as well, which is going to be status 200. Okay, and here we're still going to use an async view as well. So we're going to say async view JWT token authentication, and this is going to take in the credentials. And the credentials, we are going to be using a OAuth2 password request form that is provided by FastAPI. All right, so that is what they recommend us to use for authentication. So just import it from fastapi.security, import OAuth2 password request form. This is actually expecting username and password for login, but we can still use email. What we just need to do is just to make that name username, but even if we are sending email, but we can identify it as a username. Our view will say credentials equals to OAuth2 password request form. This also depends, just depends, you don't have to pass anything in. Then lastly, also the DB section, which depends on our get DB. So first thing to do is, first of all, we want to get the user, or want to check if the user with the provided email exists. So we already have a utility method in our SQL query. We already have a method to check if a user exists by the email. So we are still going to be using this method. All right, so what we need to do in here, we simply just say user equals to SQL underscore query dot check if user exists. So this is expecting the DB and as well the email that we want to check. So we can say email is equals to our credentials dot username. All right, so this is the name that our OAuth2 password request form is using. So even if we are passing our email, we can still use that name. All right, so once these credentials is passed, so if we're going to say if not user, that means if a user with that email is not found, we want to simply raise an HTTP exception status.401 HTTP 401 unauthorized. Then we can provide a detail, all right, which is simply message. You can say valid credentials. All right, so once we have that, so if a user with that email exists, we also need to check the password. Remember, we have a utility method to verify users password. So we also say if not uts dot verify password. And in this case, we need the raw password. So the raw password in this case is going to be our credential.password, which is the password that the user is going to provide. Then the hash password is going to be our user.password, which is the password that we have stored in our database. this does not match, if this does not return for us a good response, we also want to raise. All right. So if both password and email is all right, we want to generate an access token. So we can simply say access underscore token is equals to our JWT underscore token. I don't think I've imported it, so let me quickly check if I've imported it. So JWT auth dot. So let me quickly import that. I think I have not imported that file. So we can say dot dot import the JWT auth. So we can simply say dot access token, and this is expecting a data dictionary. So in this dictionary, the data that we want to encode is just the user ID. So user underscore ID is going to be equals to our user dot ID. So we want to encode the user's ID. So if you have any other field, maybe like the user row as well, you can also pass it along with it. But for this, we just want the user ID. So once we have that generated for us, we can simply return a dictionary of access token equals to our access token that we generated, and then token type, set it to para. All right, so that's all we need to do for our login endpoint. So before we also test this, let's also define the endpoint for users to request forget password or password reset. So this we're also going to define a route. So we're going to say router, and this the status code is also going to be okay. So this we are going to call it reset underscore password request. All right, so this we are going to create a schema to validate the data that the user is going to be sending for us, which is obviously their email. All right, so I'm going to call that forget password. So we're going to say schema.forget password reset. I've not created that, so let's just create that now. So let's go over to our schema. In here, we'll create a class. We'll call it forget password. So in here, we just simply say email. All right, so that's all we want for this. So we can save this and head back to our auth file. So here we're going to simply say schema dot forget password. Then here we also need the background task because we are also going to be sending an email. So we say background underscore task is our background task that we imported. All right, so we also need the DB as well. So the DB session, which depends. So the first thing first is also to get the user through the forget password schema, all right, that we created just now. All right, the schema user variable is using our SQL query, sorry, dot check user, and it's going to take in DB, and as well email equals to the email that the user supplied. All right, sorry, it's going to be rest.email that is coming from our schema. All right, so we're going to say if not user. That means if we check and there is no user with that email that was provided, we want to raise an HTTP exception error and status code of, yes, we can use status of, I'm thinking of the one we can use. I think we'll use 400 ad request, or it's not a good idea to return an error. Why? Simply because if we return an error, especially when it's a user that is trying to gain access into our site, even when they are not originally users of our site, they can keep on guessing email, all right, until probably they get the one that didn't return error. All right, so for us to avoid that, instead of us to raise an error, we just return a response. All right, so the user don't have to know if what they did was successful or not successful. So we can use the respond object from FastAPI. I think I've imported that, so let me quickly check. Let's see. Okay, it's imported already, so we can use that. And this respond object can take in status code, the content, if there's any header, there's any media type, you can as well take that. So we also say the content in this case is just going to be an email to reset your password has been sent, even when it's not really actually sent. So if the user is actually a genuine user, it's going to receive an email, but if it's not a genuine user, no email will be received. But he will not know if its request was rejected or not. So that is another security reason and security measure. So an email to reset your password. All right, then yeah, we can return status code, and we can even return status dot can get know that there's no the user is not found, but this will be the output of the message. All right, so if we have a user, the next thing we want to do is to send the user an email they need to verify their password. So let's construct the email. To do that, we will need a token, so we can as well use our GWT function or GWT auth.create token. We can as well use this to create a token. All right, so say the data this time is a user, sorry, is expecting a user ID is going to be the user retrieve.id. All right, so we are passing this to this token, so this will generate a token for this user. All right, so then we also need a subject. So say subject will just be password reset request password, and we also need a recipient. We can say recipient is equals to users dot email. All right, then the message, I will just copy and paste the message, then I'll walk you through it. So if we paste the message, it's the same message, the same format of message that we used for email verification. It's just a Python string formatting. We are using our HTML within the string. Then if you observe the password reset link that we constructed, you can see someone has requested a password reset with your email. The email will be substituted here. And went further and say if that is you can reset your password with link below. Then this is where we actually construct the link. You can see http :/127.0.0.1.8000/API/v1/reset-password. See, we are using reset token, so here our token will be substituted here. All right, so we just provide some basic styling, and within you see we have reset password in the anchor tag. All right, so and then it says if you didn't request this, you can ignore this email. Your password won't change until you access the link above. All right, then you see we are passing the user email, and we are also passing the token. So the user.email will be substituted in a place where we have this 0 here, then where the token will be substituted in that reset token. All right, so that will be our message. Then after that, we can call our utility function for sending email, which is our uts.send me, and this is expecting our background tags, which we already have. So we have a background tag, so we can pass that in, and also is expecting subject, we can pass our subject. Then it's also expecting our recipient, so we can pass our own recipient, and think lastly the message. So message can be our own message. All right, so with that out of the way, we can, once we've successfully sent a message, we can simply return a response. We can say return a simple message response, which you can say message, and the message is going to be email to reset your password has been sent. So this will not be the final response. So if the user is an actual user, the user will obviously get this message that an email to reset their password has been sent. All right. So this is the function to send password reset requests. And next, we are going to create the function that is actually going to handle the reset password once the user clicks on the available link, which is the reset password link. This is the view that sorry, I said view. This is not Django. This is a FastAPI. This will be the endpoint that will handle that particular link. All right, so to create the endpoint, we also create another route as well. So this is also going to be a post request, and the endpoint is going to be reset dash password. All right, so the status code is going to be 200. Okay. All right, so we're still going to make this an async and function view. So this, we are going to call it reset password. Also reset password. So yeah, we pass the request body, which is going to be schema dot reset password data, but we've not created this yet, so we'll create that shortly. So let's just continue. Say db equals to session, which depends on get db. All right, so let's quickly create this schema now. So let's head over to our schema.py file, and just below here we create a simple class which we can call reset password, and this is also going to be inherited from our base model. And here we are expecting a token which is going to be string, and then we're expecting a password which is also going to be a string, and a confirm password which is also going to be a string as well. All right, so this is all we need to do here. We can set the ORM mode. We have to put it in a config, so we say class config ORM mode is equals true. All right, so we save this. So with this set, so let's head back to our view. So our schema.reset password, that's done. All right, so we're going to put our logic in a try and except block. So let me create that. And we remember we are receiving token and the password. So first of all, we want to decode the token so that we can receive the user ID that is encoded in that token. So with that user ID, we can query for the user that we want to update their password. All right, so that's what we want to do. So to do that, since we're already using the JWT token, we can use the verified token, because the verified token, okay, let's see, I think we can use the verified token, or we can as well create, okay, let's just create our own decode general token. So it's kind of similar to the verified access token, so I won't just waste your time to start coding. I'll just paste it, then we'll just I'll just walk you through it. So what I will do now, just simply paste that. So we're going to call it decode underscore general token. It's going to be taking just token alone, and here we are doing the try and trying to use the JWT.decode to decode the token using the same secret, using the same algorithm. And here we are receiving the user ID, and we are getting it from payload.get user ID. If user ID is none, we want to return an HTTP exception. Status equals to 400. DT, the token is invalid or has expired. Then we have token data, which we are still using the same schema.token data, which we already have here. Token data, which is having a user ID. All right, so this should be user ID, so we can correct this user ID. All right, so we have user ID equals to our own user ID, except we have a JWT error. We want to return a HTTP exception also with a message of token is invalid or has expired. Then we want to return the token data. All right, that's good, that's fine. So we can save this and use this general token now to actually decode that. So we can say token, or actually token user ID is going to be coming from let's say JWT underscore auth dot decode general token. So this is expecting just the token alone. So our token, which is coming from response body dot token. All right, so when this decode, we will have let me just call it res or respond. All right, back. So all right, sorry, yes, there should be colon here. Then except we have a JWT error, so we have to import this from just import JWT error, because once the user receives the token, what is sending the token and the new passwords back to the server. So as a result of that, the token has to still be checked if it's still valid, or if the token has expired in some way. Maybe the user didn't use the token that was sent to them on time. In that case, the token can expire, so we want to also catch that. So once we have this, our token is decoded and we have the user ID, we can issue a query to our database and say user underscore query, which is equal to db.query models.user. all right, dot filter. I want to filter by the ID, so models.user.id is equals the respond.user ID. all right, so this respond is our token data. So once it's decoded, we have access to the user ID from the token, and with that we can issue a query to get the user from our database. Not user query dot first, so we want to check if the user does not exist. We want to raise an HTTP error, so with the status code of 400. all right, so that's what we want to do. Then if validates if the user exists, next we want to check is if the password matches. So we're going to say if request body, that is what we use, that password is not equals to request body dot confirm password. We also want to raise another HTTP exception. This time we say status code of 400 as well. Then we can give a detailed message of password do not match. So if the password match, what we need to do next is to hash the new password, then update the old password. So we say password variable, which we are going to use our utils dot hash password, and we are going to be passing the request body dot password. all right, so once we hash the password, we want to update the old one, so we can say user query dot update, and within this update we want to update the feed called password, and want to set it equals to our own password, which is the hash password. Then lastly, we'll put synchronized session equals to false. all right, so once we've updated that feed, we want to say db.commit to commit the changes. Then once we commit the change, we want to return a simple message of password. all right, so that's all we need to do. Update the feed, then return a message. Then if there's any error, we want to return a simple message as well. I think we are having issue with our indentation. Let me try and fix this. Okay, so indentation is fixed. all right, sorry about that. So we have our password reset functionalities done. So let's just review it one more time before we test. So the very first endpoint was us to send an email to the user to reset their password. That's the reset password email. So the thing is, the user provide their email. We check if there's a user for that email. If there's no user for that email, we also return a message, which is just an email to reset your password has been sent. So even if we didn't send any email, we don't want the user to know that their request failed, so that they will not keep on trying different email. all right, so if we have that, we encode the user information, which is obviously the user ID, using our JWT token. So once we do that, we send an email all right, using our sendMe function that we created in our UTs. So this is us constructing our subject, our recipe, our message. And this is actually the message which contains the link to reset your password. All right, so once this email is sent to the user, so when we are using, if we want to use this API with any front end, we have to change this URL to show the front end URL, because this link, when they click it, it should redirect them to the page where they are going to enter their new passwords. All right, then the front-end developer will know how to extract the token from the URL and send it along with the new passwords. Then that request will have to come over to the reset password endpoint. So this reset password endpoint is expecting 3 body data, which is the token, the password, and the confirmed password. So once those 3 data are sent, first of all, it decodes the token to get the user ID. Once we have that, we query the user model, which is the user database. So once we query, we check if there's a user, if a user matches that query, that's if we have a user for that ID. If for any reason we don't have a user for that ID, we want to return an HTTP session of 400. That means something is wrong. Then if the user exists, that is everything is okay, we want to check if the password matches. And if the password does not match, we also want to return an error. But if the password match, we want to hash the new passwords that the user is supplying using our hash password function that we created earlier. So once we have that, we want to update the user data, which is the user password feed from the database. So we update password and we set it to be a new hash password. So once we do that update, we do db.commit and we are returning a simple message of password reset successfully. And if for any reason there's an error, maybe a JWT error, maybe the token has expired before this request was sent, we want to also return a message of token is invalid or has expired. All right, with these 2 out of the way and also our login endpoint also set, it's time for us to test our login endpoint and also the reset password endpoint. So let's just start our server again. API.main :app -- reload. All right, so our server is up. We can head over to our browser and then try out http://8000 documentation. So let it restart. Okay, I think everything is loading fine now. All right, we can see our sign up endpoint, email verification, login, then the forget password, and also the reset password. Oh, we are having a typo here, so let's quickly fix that. Sorry, this should be / forget password, and the same with this should be / reset password. All right, so correct that. So once you save that and you head back to refresh. All right, so let's check one more time. Yeah, you can see the forget password and reset password. So let's try and log in. So we created a couple of users when we tested out our sign up, and the require field docs here. So we enter test user 4, then the password. So now let's hit send. All right, let's see. We have 200, right? Okay, our token was generated and we have bearer, so our sign up is working. So let's test that the password reset. Let's try and change this particular user's password, though we don't have any authenticated route yet, but we will set that later on. So let's test that forget password. We try it now, then enter our email. So we can enter that test. All right, so let's execute. Let's see what happened. We have 200. We have email to reset your password has been sent. All right, so let's check our email. So when we come to our email, which is the main trap, you can see we have just received an email, which is the password reset request for test user 4. So let's check it. All right, you can see we have the someone has requested password reset with the email, the link to reset your password. So let's open this in another tab. Of course, it's not going to lead to anywhere because it's not found, but what we want is to retrieve this token and send it back with the new set of password. So grab this token, our documentation. So let's test our reset password now, which is expecting the token. So we're going to paste the token here. All right, that's our token. They want to enter a new password. So let me put a new password as Henry4321, and this as well, Henry4321. All right, so let me quickly just double check the token and make sure I'm sending you right token. All right, so our token is complete, is correct. So let's send this request. So if we send the request, let's check our response. All right, we have a successful response, password reset successfully. Okay, so let's refresh our docs and try to log in with this new password. All right, so let me try and log in now with the new password. So if we come back to our login page and then we hit try it now. Four, three, two, one. So let's hit send. So let's check our response. All right, we see our response was successful. That means our reset password is working fine. Our login endpoint is also working fine. All right, guys, I'm going to end this second video here. So in the next video, we start implementing the agents feature so that agents can start adding properties and creating their profiles, uploading their profile pictures and all that. See you guys in the next video. Don't forget to subscribe and also give this video a thumbs up.